Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from Parking Battle 9018 and it says, am I the arsehole here for wanting to divorce my husband after he left our newborn and toddler with our teenage daughter while he went out with another woman? I feel like I need some outside perspective on a really tough situation. My husband and I have been married for 19 years and we have 3 kids together, a 13-year-old daughter, a 2-year-old and a newborn. Our journey to parenthood wasn't easy. We faced a lot of fertility struggles and my husband has been my rock through it all. That's why this situation has hit me so hard. Recently, I started thinking about divorce after I realized my husband had left our young children alone at home while he went on what appears to be a date with another woman. It's been difficult for me to process everything, and I'm still unsure if I'm overreacting. His parents seem to think it was just a mild mistake, but I honestly find that hard to swallow. A couple of days ago, I decided to take a much needed me day. I told my husband how I felt, and he agreed I could go out for a bit. I went out with my mum and sister for lunch, a mini shopping spree, and we even got our nails done. It was lovely to have some time to unwind. I left the house around 1 PM, planning to be back for around 6 PM. My husband was supposed to be at home with the kids since we didn't have anyone to babysit on short notice. While I was out, I received notifications from our Ring camera. Around 5:50 PM, I saw something was happening at the front door. I called my husband, who assured me everything was fine and he was just picking up pizza. I thought nothing of it, knowing he was with the kids. Fast forward to around 6 PM and I got another notification that he was back home. Due to the long wait at the nail salon and bad traffic, I didn't arrive home until 8 PM. When I got inside, I immediately noticed something was off. My husband's car was gone. I walked into the house to find my toddler playing with spit, and my newborn was crying uncontrollably. My teenage daughter was in tears because she couldn't calm the baby down. I quickly took the baby, changed her, fed her, and got her to bed, checking in with my daughter to see what happened. She told me she didn't know where her dad was, but that he had told her to watch the kids because he had something important to do. I comforted her and reassured her that it was a big task for her to handle alone. I felt awful she'd been put in that situation. My husband finally came home around 10 PM, looking somewhat drunk. When I asked where he had been, he casually claimed he was with his wife having a good time. It felt like a slap in the face. He took off his pants and acted as if everything was normal, completely dismissing what had just happened. The next day when I confronted him about his absence, he lied and said he fell asleep at 7:35 PM. I was furious and called him out for being dishonest, insisting I knew he had been out with another woman. I reached out to my mother-in-law and my own mum for advice, trying to gain some perspective. My mother-in-law minimized it, saying it was a common mistake for men and that I needed to move on for the kids' sake. You know, they need their father at home. I've been doing a lot of soul searching since that day. Part of me wants to fight for our marriage, to believe we can work through this rough patch. However, another part of me is devastated and feels that I deserve better. I think about filing for divorce, seeking child support and pursuing full custody of the kids so I can provide them with a stable environment. So here I am, wondering if I'm being the arsehole for even considering divorce. Am I overreacting? Should I be more forgiving because of our history? Or am I justified in wanting to leave this relationship for the happiness and safety of myself and my children? Am I the arsehole here? Now, of course, absolutely not the arsehole in this situation. He dumped the responsibility of the children onto your 13-year-old daughter to go be with what it sounds like another woman whilst drinking for hours. You know, that's not a mistake. And you're the one who's thinking clearly about what your kids need, just stability, safety, and basically a parent that won't abandon them on a whim. Infamous City says, not the arsehole, not even close. He didn't make a mistake. He made a series of selfish, reckless choices. Leaving a newborn and toddler with a 13-year-old so he could go out drinking, likely with another woman, is neglect. Not a normal guy thing. Then he lies and gaslights you, comes home drunk and acts like nothing happened. Nah, you're not overreacting. You're waking up. Divorce isn't cruel. It's protecting your kids from a man who clearly checked out. Let the enablers whine. You're doing what's right. Rich Ad says he didn't even have the audacity to lie well. Like, you were home and his excuse is he fell asleep. Where, Fred? In a vagina? Because it wasn't at home in your own bed. Love, you know what's up. I'm holding your hand as I say this. Your marriage is over, and you need to be smart about your next steps. Speak to a lawyer and get your ducks in a row. Quietly. And when you're freaking out about whether you're ruining your kids' lives by leaving him, remember your teenage daughter and ask, is this the marriage you would want her to have? You don't deserve this, and she doesn't deserve to watch her mother suffer in this marriage and grow up thinking that this is all there is. The Duchess says, it's difficult to say, not the arsehole. He's clearly cheating, and to me, that is obviously supported by his mother. The good news for him is he will have a place to stay when you put him out. He put your teen and babies at risk. He's put your health at risk. I'm also concerned about what did he say to your daughter as to why she didn't call you when she was overwhelmed when he left. You just had a baby, and he couldn't be bothered to stay home for 7 hours to be a parent. What exactly are you trying to salvage? Sending you the warmest internet hugs I can. Hope you find a solution that works for you and your children. Strong Nothing says you need to ask yourself these questions. What would you say to your daughter in the future when she marries/has a partner? If she was being treated by her husband the way you are by your husband? Is this the type of relationship you want to model for your children? You're not the arsehole, by the way. OP says, no, it's not, I promise. I would never want my daughters in this situation. I would honestly tell her to leave before things get worse for her and her children, if she has any. So, at some point later, OP comes in with an update and says a lot has gone down, and I appreciate all the advice. But for those who think it was fake, that's just your opinion. My husband and I went back and forth for a couple more days after my last post. I finally got him to watch the video, and it proved he was the one lying while saying I was. He kept watching it and coming up with excuse after excuse. I told him that if our marriage fell apart, it would be because of his behavior that night. I asked him a few things. 1. Why did he leave our daughter with the babies? 2. What was he doing? 3. Who was this so-called second wife? All he could say that I was being too dramatic and that I was not trusting him too much. I shot back. You broke my trust when you left the babies alone with our kid. I told him he had one chance to come clean, and if he didn't, we'd have to talk about divorce, child support, and all that. Still, he stood firm saying, I didn't do anything. I was so frustrated. I asked him why he couldn't just be honest. His answer, why do you think I was cheating? That's not trusting me. I reminded him that he admitted to being with his wife right in front of me. He said I was drunk. I replied that he shouldn't have gone out and gotten drunk without a way to get home safely while our kids were at home without an adult. He apologized, but that didn't change what he did. I told him his actions messed up our daughter's trust in him, hurt our marriage, and affected our parenting. He just kept pushing his own narrative about that night. On April 17th, he told me I was overreacting and that we should keep it together for the kids. I reminded him that he lied to me, called me a liar, put our kids in danger, and wrecked our marriage. Then he snapped and got mad, claiming there was a reason for everything but wouldn't tell me anything. On April 19th, he came clean and admitted he'd been seeing another woman, calling her his second wife. He told me that if I couldn't accept it, then it didn't matter to save a marriage that was already falling apart, with only me trying to hold it together. I shot back that since he was the one ruining our marriage and wrecking our lives with this nonsense, then fine, let it be. I told him he'd be the reason our kids wouldn't have a dad in the house because of his selfish, ignorant, and irresponsible behavior. He lied to our daughter about her phone, put our kids in a tough spot, lied to me, messed up our marriage, and then made me look the one who's dishonest. It's just the trying every excuse when everyone knew what was obvious from the very start, like trying to gaslight you about what actually happened, calling you untrustworthy when he's the one who's sneaking around. And how long has that been going on for that you haven't known about? I'd be talking to your older daughter about that because, I imagine this isn't the first time that he's done something like this. And then him saying, let's stay together for the kids after he's the one that put them in danger. And then has the absolute audacity to try and blame you for not accepting his affair. Bloody bozo. But in the comments, Love Losing says, get a good lawyer and don't sign anything he gives you. I'm so proud of you for taking these steps to get away from him. He's a bad father, a bad husband, and a bad man. Please get a good lawyer and hopefully you can get some alimony and child support, because I don't know if he deserves custody if he's willing to leave a child to deal with babies by themselves. Seriously proud of you for taking these first steps. I hope everything works out for you and your kids. But now, I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. Now, I saw this next one, saw the title, and I was intrigued. It's from r/confessions from Hannah Lucy, who says, I stole from a museum as a child. When I was a child, around 7 or 8, I went on a school trip to a museum that had an ancient Egypt exhibit running. The museum staff allowed the class to look at some old relics, passing them around in a circle. I remember looking at this little greeny blue colored figurine of a goddess with a hippo head. I really liked it. Without a second thought, I put it in my pocket and took it home with me. I sat at home playing with it, not really understanding the gravity of what I had done. Then we had a big assembly at school. The museum were looking for this figurine, as it was not a replica but an actual ancient Egyptian artifact. I remember playing scenarios in my head of how I could give it back without getting caught, but I couldn't see a way out of it. The museum became angrier. The assemblies grew more pressing. Letters went home to all parents. Parents were called in of naughty children who could have possibly done it. Finally, everyone calmed down. They realized they weren't getting it back. I got away with it. The problem is, I'm now 31 and I still have the figurine. I couldn't throw it away. It's thousands of years old. I couldn't give it back. I would have been in unbelievable trouble. If I gave it back now, it would look strange that it's turned up after all this time in the same town by someone who went to the same school. I've never told anyone about this figurine. No one else has ever seen it. I have no idea what I ever do with it. But that's my confession. Museum thief of an ancient artifact at 7 years old. I mean, I'm not sure of the possibilities on this one. Isn't there just some way of anonymously mailing it to the museum or something along those lines? I know with like a lot of registered mail, obviously you could be tracked down, but I just wonder if you could fit it in a like normal post where you couldn't be tracked or something. I couldn't imagine they'd go to like FBI levels that you see in the movies of tracking you down, you know, tracking the postage stamp to the city and then finding CCTV of you putting it in the postbox or something like that. I mean, do they have the funds for that? It's sending my brain off on a tangent here, but comments say, I want this to be a movie where the figure has the spirit of an ancient pharaoh that possesses the one who took it, and they have to share a body. Every now and then, Pharaoh gets control of the body and has to adapt to modern society. Comment 2 says, how wouldn't they notice that they didn't get it back after passing it around? I feel like they wouldn't let you leave until they found it. Opie says, you would think so, wouldn't you? But obviously someone wasn't paying enough attention to what came back. They'd contacted the school by the next morning though. Commenter replies that saying, you could mail it back to them and not put a return address on it. Commenter says, was it Tararet? Did you understand the gravity of its history at the time? Opie says, after Googling, yes, that is what it looks like. I can't recall really understanding the gravity of it all the time. Obviously as an adult, I do. Commenter says, museum worker here. Handling collections in museums are actually very common, and are very much a mixed bag as far as authenticity goes. Depending on the museum, the type of artifact and the resources available, objects in handling collections can be genuine, even for archaeology or paleontology, replicas or related contemporary objects. Some objects can only be used by staff and volunteers for demonstrations, and others are fully hands-on by visitors. From the description, it sounds like the OP has a Faience Ushabti figure of Tararet. That pronunciation, I'm sorry. I'm assuming it's quite small as it fits in a child's pocket. There are millions and millions of Ushabtis around and many of them are not particularly valuable, usually due to condition. You could buy one from an auction site for under £100 easily. You shouldn't, because virtually all antiquities are trafficked and obtained by questionable methods. But you could. Especially large museums like the Met or the British Museum will have thousands upon thousands, perhaps millions of tiny to small objects like this. If you visit the Met, they have thousands of ushabtis, stone amulets, beads, etc. just laid out on shelves inside alcoves in the Egyptian galleries. I can't imagine how many more are in storage. Likewise, the British Museum does indeed use genuine antiquities in their handling collections because the educational value of letting people interact with one random potsherd or amulet is higher than whatever monetary value or cultural value might come from it. Sat in a specimen box for 50 years and only checked once in a blue moon at audit. The museum was unhappy because we don't like losing our things. They're meant to be there for everyone to enjoy for as long as possible, and we have legal obligations to look after them. I'd be surprised if anyone's life was ruined over this, however, especially for a handling object that may not even have been accessioned, made part of a permanent collection with additional legal responsibilities. The OP, I would return it. The museum will be grateful, and having been below the legal age of responsibility, I'd be surprised if they would be liable for anything. Of course, that depends on the local laws and culture where OP lives, so your mileage may vary. I am not a lawyer, etc. Last commenter says, museum worker here. I believe this story. Artifacts without provenance, meaning good records of where they come from, are often used as touchable education items. We have a 3,000-year-old knife in a volunteer cart. It was found by someone on their land years ago, but they didn't remember where. This means for research purposes is not a good item to keep in our collections. Others are also correct that there are things like ancient pottery are so plentiful that some can be sacrificed to public education without taking away from our collective historical knowledge. If it were me, I'd send it back, depending on the museum's size. They probably don't have the resources to do a lot of police work and will probably be more relieved than anything. And the final commenter said, unless you're in Egypt, the museum stole it too. Sleep soundly, young museum thief. OP did come in with a very small update on this one and just said, just to let everyone know, thanks for your comments. I did the right thing and returned the figurine to the museum. I did it anonymously from a different city. I hope they receive it. I feel a lot better. Thank you. And, I'm glad that OP did return the statuette, and imagine being at that museum when that turns up. Like, what the fuck just happened? But there was a comment below this that just had my eyebrows like, what the hell? Lobing Wolf says, a small statue is nothing. I know of 2 separate incidents where a young child took home a baby penguin from the Omaha Zoo. Commenter have to ask what happened to the baby penguin. Loping replies saying one was caught when they showed it off on the school bus on the way home from the field trip, and the other got it all the way back to central Iowa in their backpack. The zoo was of course immediately called, and they worked out getting it back to them that evening. Someone commented on that one and just said, basically, the second time that happens, that's on the zoo. How the hell do they steal 2 baby penguins? But I'm super glad they got home safely in the end. I'm just like trying to picture this scene. Whenever I think of school buses, I always think of like the big yellow ones that you see in movies in the US, and just some kid sat in the back with his backpack and just pulling out a baby penguin. How the hell did he even get it in the bag without anyone noticing? That's madness. But anyway, what do you guys make of these situations? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. Now, our next story comes from the Am I Overreacting subreddit from Turbulent End 7905. And it says, my wife went out to lunch with a guy she met at the gym. I think this is a huge no-no. Am I overreacting? My 39 male, wife 39 female, have been together for 14 years, married for 11. I've been cheated on in the past several times, and I'm very sensitive to any behavior that could be construed that way. My wife goes to the same gym 5 days a week and is always there when they open at 5 a.m. It's a serious thing for her. I personally go 3 days a week, but a different gym. Needless to say, conversations have been struck up with her by various people for the last 5 years or so. One guy in particular, who is divorced and 15 years older, started being friendly to her a while back. Not sure how long exactly. A conversation arose about a good lunch special at a steakhouse in town, and it became an ongoing thing. You gotta try this pork chop, etc. Well, on Friday afternoon, she went to lunch with this gentleman, and then she came home. She mentioned that her leftovers were from this place, and she went with a friend. Never said anything about a work friend, so I pressed a bit more for curiosity's sake. She told me what happened and swore up and down nothing happened, and she's not interested in that way. I will say our marriage has had its ups and downs, but the ups were way higher than the downs. My wife has given me zero reason in 14 years not to trust her. However, the circumstances are quite suspect. What does everyone think? Straight after this, I made like a villager from Minecraft noise. But the top commenter says to OP on this one, my wife, 39 female, sent me 40 male this thread because pretty much this exact scenario happened with us, but much earlier in our marriage, maybe 2 years in. She went to a gym 4 to 5 days per week around 5 a.m. The guy was also about 15-ish years older, and they went to lunch after meeting in the gym and apparently regularly striking up brief casual conversations. She came home with leftovers, which I ate. After she told me about the whole thing, I asked her why she went on a date with someone, despite, being married to me. We mostly laughed about the whole thing, first by ourselves and then with our friends who we saw later that night, and agreed this was a ridiculous thing to do and obviously a date. As if to illustrate the point for us in real time, the guy starts flirt texting her while we were with our friends that night, and we all start laughing further as we read the evidence that I was right and my wife maybe shouldn't innocently go to lunch with random dudes. I was mostly happy about how right I was being proven, and I jokingly bring this up a decade later if the situation ever calls for a playful jab. Needless to say, that was the only time they hung out, and I believe conversation generally went way down. I definitely didn't ask her to switch gyms or even stop talking to him, but it was understood that she should keep the appropriate context going forward, that she's being hit on, and any friendship or whatever with him wouldn't work. It just all went away quickly after we all had a laugh about it. Though I was annoyed that some loser was trying to hit on a woman over a decade his junior who was clearly married. Some people just suck. Your conversation with your wife should go something like what I just described. If it doesn't, something might be wrong. OP responded to that saying, your ending is how we ultimately ended up. In 14 years, she has never given me one single iota of a reason to think she's cheated. I didn't ask her to switch gyms, and she apologized for not telling me beforehand because she simply forgot. She can be quite forgetful sometimes, so it's definitely a well backed up excuse. She's been on a hunt for friends in the last 5 years or so because she has so little. She's in the gym 12 hours a week and has at least made 1 to 2 girlfriends from there. This is the first dude she has contacted outside of a gym that I'm aware of. She told me at lunch, which was 2.5 hours, that all they even talked about was the gym, the dude's kids and grandkids, etc. She said it never felt romantic, and if it did, she would shut it down. Anyway, understanding replies that saying 2.5 hours for lunch. Sorry, but that's a date. Also, he's letting her into his life by talking about his kids and grandkids. Did she talk about you at all? Did he even know she's married? Don't downplay this. Just because they didn't go to a hotel doesn't mean it wasn't inappropriate. I really hope she realizes that. Just another user says, don't listen to anyone except the facts. Not overreacting. The facts. She has been conversational at the gym for 5 years, but this is apparently the first time she's taken the conversation out of the gym, meaning she's familiar with this guy or something's different about him than everyone else. So much so that she felt comfortable enough to get lunch with him. She told you about getting lunch with a friend, but didn't say who, even though you've been married for a decade and would know all her friends. This is the kicker. My girlfriend and I have been together for a year, but she never says, I did so and so with a friend. It's always I did so and so with X person. She's given you no reason not to trust her, except those two. She says there's nothing going on, which I believe is true. I think most affairs, after this long of marriage, begin with, I'm not interested like that. But the increased time spent together allows interest to grow. If it were me, that would be the last time she hangs out with him one-on-one. Maybe if she was more open about who she went with and why, I'd be more open-minded. But she started this off very sketchy. And the final comment which says, unlike others who have replied here, I'm going to go another way and say the boring, you need to have a conversation with her. First, she did not hide this. She didn't lie. She wouldn't have brought home leftovers to put in your fridge to find if she were hiding it from you. Second, can it lead to something else? Maybe. So can work relationships, neighbors, etc. Is she open to having you all meet up for lunch? Not to take over the friendship, but I would think both she and he, if he's not being a shit, would have no issue with the two of you meeting each other. You didn't say it was your current wife who had cheated, so I'm going to go with it wasn't her. So if after 14 years of her being a faithful partner, one lunch brings up accusations, I can see where she would be mad or frustrated. You're holding her to account for others' behavior. Third, ultimately you've been cheated on before, and so this is triggering. It should be okay for you to admit that and her to understand that's how you feel, which warrants a conversation about why and what it would take to be comfortable. There is so much here that is context that none of us here can see. So while I get why you're concerned, freaking out about it would be a serious overreaction in my opinion. After the comments, OP edited their post and said so many comments. I'm trying to catch up, but I have very little time. We've had a lengthy discussion about all this. She didn't necessarily hide it from me, and I didn't have to prod her much at all for her to tell me it was a man from the gym. She's known him for 2 years in passing, and they talk occasionally. She's never given me a reason to think she's cheated. This time just seemed very sus, and she apologized a lot for forgetting to tell me she was going to do this. She's very scatterbrained and forgetful, so it's not out of the ordinary. Anyway, thank you everyone for the rational, sane, helpful advice. Luckily I did most of that before I saw all your replies, so I think we're okay now. Thank you again. And the comments were back and forth after this one. A lot of people saying, she's given you zero issues not to trust her after 14 years. Other people saying this is sketchy, the wording around it using I'm going to see a friend rather than, the guy from the gym or Derek from the gym or whatever. And some people in the middle saying, that you should be trusting her because after 14 years, but at the same time, these feelings could grow between them, seeing as they've taken this out of the gym now and they've seen a pattern of this before. But what do you guys make of this situation? Put yourself in OP's shoes. How would you feel about that? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories. Your love, your support, your time, it always means the absolute world to me. And don't forget, at the very end of the video, there'll be a couple of playlists there that you can click on, and it will automatically scroll through the videos for you. So thank you so much, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.